Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to what is this, our third of 5 August Lunch and Learn sessions around land conservation policy and funding opportunities that the Connecticut Land Conservation Council is hosting in partnership with DEEP's Land Acquisition and Management Office. If you wouldn't mind admitting folks, I won't get distracted by those that are coming into the room. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Amy Patterson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Land Conservation Council, which is the umbrella organization for Connecticut's land conservation community, working mostly with Connecticut's land trusts. The Open Space and Watershed Land Acquisition Grant Program and the Urban Green and Community Garden Program offered by DEEP are programs that we work on each and every year to not only make sure they are well funded, but also that they are working efficiently and effectively. And with the next grant round open and applications due October 2nd, we thought it would be very timely to offer these opportunities for questions and answers on information that would help land trusts in applying or in preparing for their grant applications. It's also a time where the state green plan is slated for revision. And so we have also had some conversation around that as well. These sessions are being recorded. If you missed any of the previous sessions, they'll be available to you to go back and listen to. But again, they're really meant to give you an opportunity to ask questions. They're only an hour, very informal, and I want to give you a lot of time to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Lindsay Soar, who is the Director of the Office of Land and Acquisition Management at DEEP. And Lindsay, take it away.
All right. Thank you, everybody. As Amy said, Office Director for Land Acquisition and Management. I'm going to share my screen. We'll do a little PowerPoint, and then we'll open it up to questions. So, Amy, let me know when you can see it.
I can see it, and it looks like it's ready to go, Lindsay. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so today we're going to talk about myself and Ya from CLCC are going to talk about some federal and other match sources that can be combined with open space and watershed land acquisition grant program. As Amy and I were talking, we were saying this is not exhaustive. This is what we currently know we're combining with OSWA grant program. So there might be other sources out there. We're happy to learn about more. So if you guys have questions or have other sources that you're looking at or you're using, certainly touch base with us so we can understand the full range. So first, I'll just do a little overview. I'm sure most of you know, Open Space Grant Program, OSWA, purchase permanent interest in land, so fee acquisition or conservation easements, and the eligible entities are municipalities, nonprofit conservation organizations or land trusts, and water companies. So we're going to keep the general information about the OSWA program. We're not going to dive deep into that right now. So if you have specific questions on that, feel free to ask them afterwards, but I won't be, diving deep into the program in this presentation. And then the last slide on open space grant program, I put this up because it shows the maximum grant amount award if you're not combining federal funds. So if you, as long as funding is available, if you're a municipality and you're not in a distressed or targeted community, it's 65% of fair market value. Same thing with nonprofit land conservation organization. But if you are in a distressed municipality or targeted investment community, it's 75% of fair market value. So that's the appraised value or the sale price of the property, depending on which one is less. But when we combine federal grant opportunities, the amount that we are allowed by statute to provide with those sources combined is 90%. So you can actually get a larger amount for a project if you're combining our state funds with federal grant opportunities. So Allison Clark, who is on this call, She is our resident expert on open space grant program. So if you have questions specific to the application or any of the processes, certainly reach out. She's been answering tons of questions in the last few months once we open the round, and she can help me with some questions on this call if things come up. So we'll dive right in. One of the additional funding sources that we work a lot with our open space grant program is the Highlands Conservation Act. So this is funding through the Fish and Wildlife Service. It's the same eligible entities, except water companies don't get included. But these entities must be within the Highlands boundary. So we've been working quite a bit with the group. It's Pennsylvania, New York, us, and New Jersey that are in this Highlands Conservation Act, and been talking through the Highlands boundary, talking about potentially expanding it. So I'll show you a map in the future. Some of the municipalities are currently included, and some we're looking potentially to expand in future years. So the way we've been doing this, it's been solicited through the OSWA grant program. So it's in combination with your OSWA application. So you can indicate interest on your application. You can contact us ahead of time to see if your project would qualify. But if it does and it meets the requirements, as I said before, it can be combined with OSWA funds up to 90% of the project cost. So these are program priorities. It's pretty general. There is some mapping that has been done that will can show you whether you fit within those priorities within the GIS program that has been developed. So, general though, forest, wildlife, recreational opportunities, which aligns pretty closely with our OSWA requirements as well. And then here's the map. So I found a little bit clearer map from some of my past presentations. All the municipalities in yellow on this map in Connecticut are currently within the Highlands boundary. So if you have a project that fits those priorities and is in one of these eligible towns, you potentially could qualify for Highlands funding. The towns that are in pink are ones that we have been discussing as the group that meets regularly to talk about the Highlands Conservation Act, and we're considering expanding to those towns within future years. So for grants for this year, it's only yellow towns, but potentially in 2024 and after, some of the pink towns might be included in the boundary for Highlands. So since 2004, Connecticut's received 22 million. It's conserved quite a few acres throughout the Highlands region, and they've recently expanded to allow municipalities to get funding directly from the program. They will they're figuring out how it's going to work, but it will kind of sift through the state program, but the funds won't have to come to the state and then be distributed to the municipality. It'll be like a project gets approved by the state, and then the municipality can receive funding directly from the federal government. So some of the kinks of that is still getting worked out, but there's definitely funding available for these programs. Matt Starr within our office is the person who handles most of the Highlands Conservation Act grant program stuff. So if you think your project might qualify, if you're in one of those towns, certainly reach out to Matt, see if the project could potentially qualify. If you're looking to apply for OSWA this round, definitely reach out, let us know that this is something you're interested in, because in the fall, we have to put in a general application. We don't have to stick to it, but the state has to put in a general application of potential projects that could come in through Highlands. So if you have a project, we'd love to know about it. We'd love to include it in that. It just makes it easier moving forward to get the funding for your project.
Steve, would you pull up the map one more time before you go to NACA?
Yeah.
There was a question from Jennifer about East Granby or east of the region, and I believe that Granby is too far east. East Granby is too far east. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not eligible.
The way that they did mapping
Thank you.
was based on resource values and kind of the ridge lines that come up through here and sort of some of the resource values associated with that. So the original was kept pretty tight, but we're finding that some of the resource values extend further than that, but it doesn't go as far as Hartford or East Granby or any of that area.
And I'll use this opportunity to encourage you to put your questions. Billy just put a question into the chat. Put your questions in the chat, and then we will get to all of them at the end of the presentation, and then open the room up to more Q&A. It's a small group, so we'll be able to have quite a bit of dialogue. Billy,
So
we'll
I
get to your
will,
question.
yeah, I will preface the couple slides on this program as I am not an expert on this program, but we wanted to bring it to your attention because we do have some OSWA projects that come in that combine this North American Wetlands Conservation Act grants with OSWA funds for getting a project through. So this is in partnership with DEEP's Wildlife Division. Land trusts and municipalities can apply for federal funding through this, but it's in partnership with DEEP. So I don't think that the land trusts and the municipalities can apply directly. It will have to go through DEEP, but the focus is on habitat for waterfowl and migratory birds, and the match is 1-to-1. So if you're selected, it's the same thing. Can be combined with OSWA funds up to 90%. So my understanding is that most NACA grants, it's called NACA, are relatively small. So sometimes there's also other federal funding that gets included with that. So I would say the best way to find out more about this is to reach out to Min from our wildlife division. He has been working on NACA grants for many, many, many years. We're trying to do a better job of coordinating with him and with our OSWA grant opportunities to kind of standardize how things are done. But he has priorities set. He knows kind of who he's been working with in the past, and I'm sure he would love to hear questions and for you to reach out and to better understand the program. So I saw that Dave Kozak was on the line. We preface this with new this year, but there has always been some funding for coastal land acquisition. But we're working closer with our Land and Water Resources Division and some additional funding that has come in through this program. And there's funding provided by the EPA Long Island Sound Study, and it's managed by our Land and Water Resources Division. So this is funding that is available to municipalities and, again, nonprofits, land trusts. And the way we're doing it this year, and we're trying to kind of build it, is to do it similar to how we did Highland. So we're soliciting it through the OSWA grant program, and there will be no additional application needed, but you can indicate interest on the application, or you can contact DEEP to let them know that you're interested, to have them look at your project and see if it's something that might qualify. And again, up to 90% if projects are combined. So here are the program goals. It follows the Long Island Sound Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan. So clean waters and healthy watersheds, thriving and abundant wildlife, and sustainable and resilient communities. So our Land and Water Resources Division is kind of the go-to for this. And when they have projects come in, they have, priority areas that they're looking at. Here is the map. And one thing that we were told is this is not set in stone for any of these maps, but you should contact them if you're close to or within this pink area to see if your project might qualify. If it's tied to, the watershed or the water resources in that area, it could potentially, qualify if it's slightly outside some of these regions. And then there is also competitive funding for coastal land acquisition. So this is through NOAA. And these are a little bit trickier because it's competing nationally. So we're saying think big. So if there are larger parcels, or if you know of sets of parcels that might be combined to have significant impact, then think big and contact DEEP about it. And potentially we could apply for a competitive funding grant. This is municipalities, but not land trusts. And then it also has to be within a certain area, which I'll show the map in a minute. So this is the priorities. overlap a little bit, access to the general public, coastal resources again, and then an emphasis on it being effectively managed and protected into the future, and environmental justice areas as well. So here's the kelp project area. Again, I think this is a little bit more strict within municipalities, but you can contact them if your project might be slightly out and see if it might be something that fits with their priorities. Mindy Goslin is a relatively new staff member at DEEP, but she's helping run both of these programs, the Long Island Sound Study and the NOAA funding. And so she would be the best contact at DEEP for you to reach out and get more information. And I'm going to turn it over to Yao to talk a little bit about some of CLCC's programs that they have available.
I'm Yao. I am CLCC Senior Project Specialist, and I will just be going over two of our grant programs. And the first one is our Connecticut Conservation Partnership Program. And this is a public-private partnership between CLCC and CT DEEP. It is funded by the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. And this is an easement program that is meant to help Connecticut Land Trust increase the pace of land conservation across the state by being a source of match funds when applying to the Open Space Grant Program. And the level of funding can range between 25% to 100% of an easement's value. So with CCPP, we are seeking projects that will deliver these conservation outcomes, protect freshwater and inland wetlands, avoid forest conversion, increase the sequestration and storage of greenhouse gases, protect wildlife habitat, and increase no-cost access to recreation and experiential education. And our other grant program, though this is not federally funded, is our Transaction Assistance Grant Program. And this is a reimbursement grant that to support land trust transaction-related project expenses. And the goals of this program are to help land trusts initiate new conservation projects, bring projects to a conclusion, and be responsive to the funding needs of land trust. This program is broken up into two stages. We have our early stage transactions and closing stage transactions. With early stage transactions, we will reimburse activities such as appraisals, title searches, and environmental assessments. And land trusts are eligible for up to $5,000 in a reimbursement grants. For closing stage transactions, we are dealing with title searches, title certificate and insurance, surveys, environmental assessments, and recording fees. And land trusts are eligible for up to $20,000 in reimbursement grants. Currently, the spring round is closed, but we will open a new grant round in November 1st. That's all for me.
The one thing I wanted to add to Yao's presentation there about the CCPP program is that unlike some of the other programs, the federal funding programs that Lindsay mentioned, there's no geographic restriction there. Land trusts anywhere in the state are eligible, as long as they meet all the other criteria of the grant program, are eligible to apply for the CCPP program. And really, it's the landowners with whom the land trust is working that's the actual applicant for that program. So it is heavily coordinated between the two agencies, CLCC, the landowner, and the land trust, and that it is an easement program. And so it complements the open space grant program, whether or not a land trust is seeking to acquire an easement through OSWA, or more commonly the title, the fee acquisition.
So I didn't know if we wanted to go to the questions section. Any other?
Let me go to let's go to the chat first, and then we can open it up. I just want to make sure we don't miss some questions here. We might have to pull up the screen again for the slides again for
that's fine.
Some information. So Billy asks, what's happening? This is related to Highlands. What is happening in Massachusetts? Does Highlands and cooperation not extend to Massachusetts? Animals, insects, watersheds, and more. No boundaries. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. Funny enough, the group of states, so Pennsylvania, New York, us, New Jersey, that was one of the topics on whether or not Massachusetts would be included. Right now, I think in the federal legislation, they're not included, so it would need a federal change for them to be included in the act. But that's certainly something that us conservationists are talking about. Like, obviously, the animals and the plants are crossing boundaries. That's not a question. The resources are still there. It's more about whether federal legislation gets changed to include them, and if the funding gets changed so that all those states can be included.
I'll also add about Highlands that it is obviously it's a federal program, and it's authorized through legislation, and so some of the changes have to be approved by Congress in order to, well, any of the statutory changes would have to be approved, and so there's always opportunity in that context for advocacy. So we follow the lead of federal advocates, and we will publicize any of those opportunities for you to contact our congressional delegation and ask them to approve whatever it is we're seeking to happen.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Billy, for that question. Let's see. John asks, wants confirmation that water companies are ineligible for NAWCA. Is that correct?
John, I wish I knew for a fact. I think they're not, but I would say Min would be your best contact to know for sure whether they are or not. And I would reach out to him.
Yeah, I have that same kind of qualified response, John. I believe that that's true, that water companies are not eligible, but I only dealt with it in the context of the land trusts. So Billy then says, these programs are awesome. What are the prospects for new and bigger programs in the context of the urgency of 30 by 30? And are there ways for us to help advocate for the same? That's a great question.
One thing I would add, which is not available currently, but potentially in the future will be available for municipalities, is Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is through the National Park Service. DEEP is the lead for Land and Water Conservation Fund, and currently we don't have a program for projects from municipalities for that program, because we haven't had the staff capacity to open up a grant round. However, we just put in an application for funding to get a new position for this through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And if we bring on more staff within DEEP, I anticipate in the next few years, we're hoping to start up a grant round for municipalities, and Land and Water Conservation Fund funding can be used for, it would only be municipalities, but it could be used for park improvements and acquisitions projects. So potentially, but not as of right now. So I would say maybe 2 to 3 years. I'm going to give it a little qualifier, maybe longer, but hopefully 2 to 3 years, we might have some funding available through that.
And I have two responses to it as well, Billy. One program that we're not talking about today. There's a lot of programs we're not talking about, but one that comes to mind in particular is the Forest Legacy Program, which is a land conservation program. And it is the state would have to, like the coastal project, the NOAA project, these are big projects. They're usually multiple parcels that need to be combined together, and in order to be competitive with other states that have much larger pieces of land to conserve. But the Forest Legacy Program is run through DEEP, and we, oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
There's been quite a few. Dan Paracchio is the main lead, but
right.
that funding doesn't typically get combined with our open space funding, which is why we didn't talk about it today. But that program has been relatively successful in Connecticut with combining small parcels. And it really just depends on the year you put in the application. So, some years a project in Connecticut might not, get high enough on the list, but then on other years, other states might not have enough projects. And so we resubmit, and then the next year it gets funded. So it's persistence, but that's another great program for acquisition.
Exactly. That was the other point I was going to make, is we're not talking about it because it's not, one that combines with OSWA, Billy, but we have at CLCC, we have a page that lists many grant opportunities. When they come in, we evaluate, when we get notices of any kind of grant opportunity related to land conservation, we evaluate it. A lot of them are federal opportunities, and we post it on the website. So you can always go to that page and see what's available.
Yep.
And yeah, if you wouldn't mind plugging that link into the chat for easy access, that would be much appreciated. Okay, let's see. I did put in some clarification about NAWCA. I had dealt with this program before, and there at least was a small grants and a large grants program. There is a match component to it, but again, Min's the guy to go to.
Yeah.
Dave Kozak wanted to remind everyone that there's a free grant writing assistance service up to $10,000 is being offered through the EPA Long Island Sound Office and Connecticut Sea Grant to help towns and NGOs apply for grant funding, and provided the link to that. And we also have that information on our grant page. I highly recommend that you reach out to them for grant writing assistance.
Thanks for that, Dave.
Yep. Thank you, Dave. And Terry, if you wouldn't mind plugging your email into the chat as well.
Oh, he put it in already.
Oh,
he put it
there
in.
you are. There it is. It's the next one. All right. Billy asks, if I have pre-November 1st acquisition or closing expenses, can I apply in the November 1 grant round for those? This is for TAG.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately, you will not be able to. So the new grant round will cover expenses between November 1st, 2023 and April 30th, 2024.
So he could put in for closing costs if he was awarded an OSWA grant.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Which is the larger of the two buckets of money. Deb asks, very specific question to my project, but should I invite the owner to our Zoom where we are talking about the easement property? I now understand he is the one who would be the applicant. So this would be for CCPP.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
the other ones, Deb, but for CCPP.
So if the landowner is comfortable speaking with us, definitely you can invite them.
Okay. Oh, hold on. Okay, that's cool. But if we go with the easement, all right. So CCPP is the one it goes up to 100% of the land or 100% of the easement price.
Yes.
That's amazing. That would be very helpful. All right, good. All right, yeah, he actually wants to get involved in the land trust now. So that would be a good thing. I'll add him to the list then. And we'll see you next week on that. Thank you.
So one thing I will qualify or clarify, I guess, is so CCPP will pay 100% of the easement value, but if you're purchasing the property through OSWA and you're combining those federal funds with OSWA, you still can only get up to 90% of the purchase price of the property or the fair market value of the property. Just it's a slight qualification because the easement value might be different than the overall property price, or it will be, I would say, in most situations.
That's right, but it'll still get you, it could still
Close.
get you,
Get you close.
exactly, to 90% as opposed to 65% if you didn't take advantage of the
Right.
federal funding opportunity. But yeah, absolutely, that 90% applies to all of it.
Yep.
And then the question from Jennifer on the grant writing to Dave Kozak, can non-coastal areas take advantage of that grant writing assistance, Dave?
I do not know the answer to the top of my head. The best thing to do would be call Connecticut Sea Grant. Nancy Balcom is the contact there. I provided a link to the Long Island Sound Grant Funding Assistance Program. That link should also provide you a link to get to Connecticut Sea Grant, where you can ask that question. But someone showed a map, the Long Island Sound boundary earlier. You can link back up or send that map out. That boundary extends pretty far inland of what we traditionally consider coastal towns. For example, in the far east, that boundary is all up to Voluntown. So it's you don't necessarily have to assume that you have to be directly on Long Island Sound to qualify for this. The best thing to do would be to get to Connecticut Sea Grant in the link that I provided and ask for assistance in determining whether your project area is an area eligible for from assistance, grant writing from assistance.
Yeah, that's a misnomer. And if you look at some of the maps, and even they, even working with Dave in the past, but other members in DEEP in our Land and Water Resources division, it's, there's kind of a boundary, but it's nebulous. So contact them to see is always the answer.
Deb writes the NOAA competitive grant. Have you seen land trusts get towns to do this? How would you approach getting the town to go for the grant?
That's a tricky one. I don't have much experience with the NOAA competitive. Potentially Dave Kozak might have more experience with it as a former DEEP employee, but my understanding is Connecticut has not been all that successful with this one, and that we would be looking to put together a larger application to potentially compete. But as of right now, we have so many small parcels compared to some of the other states that it is often hard to compete. And so we would have to do something similar to what Forest Legacy does, which is, a land trust works with local land trusts nearby or the municipality and kind of cobbles together interested landowners that would make kind of a comprehensive application. And so something similar along the coast might be done. There's just less land available usually along the coast to put together an application like that. Yeah.
That's correct. The EP Long Island Sound funding program is not a nationally competitive program. It's
right.
Funding awarded just for the state of Connecticut and the state of New York. So the EPA Long Island Sound administrative funding, which is different from the NOAA administrative funding. You have much greater local receiving those funds, but you're not competing nationally. Basically, you're competing against coastal New York.
Right. Right.
When
so
you
those
say
ones
large,
are easier to get.
Yes.
Yeah. When you say large, how large? I mean,
Connecticut large is
small.
also
Yeah. So how many?
Yeah, I would say
acres?
Connecticut large is much different. Go ahead, Dave.
When you're competing in national programs such as the NOAA funding, large acquisitions are measured in $500 to $1,000, 500 1,000 foot per condo category. But EPA Long Island Sound funding can be quite small. It can be just 5 or 10 acre parcels if they are somehow you can make a link to protecting a coastal resource that might even be protecting coastal water quality, like protecting land along a tributary that goes into a tidal river.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at. Land around a brook that goes into the Niantic River right now. But it is, if you compare land out west, by acres to land here, the price is the same for a 10 acre parcel here and a 100 acre parcel out there. So, I was just wondering if it was by money or is it by size of the actual acreage?
I think it would be more by size of acreage.
Western coastal states, you can demonstrate a larger area of protection for the same amount.
Yeah.
And I will say, just drawing the analogy to the Forest Legacy program, we have competed in Connecticut. It might be 1,000 acre project in Connecticut is highly, that can compete with a 5 or 10,000 acre project out west. So it's not as if it never happens. It does. It's just harder. And our congressional delegation has recognized that inequity and has attempted to try to address that through some either statutory or some sort of administrative changes. But we can compete. I will say about the NOAA competitive, it's a great opportunity for the COGs, the councils of government, to rally around a landscape scale project. And similarly for regional conservation partnerships, regional land trusts that are doing, they are prioritizing land across town boundaries. This is a great opportunity to reach out to your municipal partners, either directly or through the COGs, to have these conversations around certain priority parcels that maybe because they're acting independently, they're not thinking about in the large scale.
Yeah.
Those NOAA funding programs and the NOAA funding program that you get from wildlife service, you can combine land acquisition with resource restoration projects to make it a more competitive project. So part of it could be acquiring land, part of it could be restoring a marsh. We can package those separate kind of proposals together to make it more competitive. And we have successfully applied for federal grants at the national level, as low as 100, 150, 200 acres, such as additions to our wildlife and wildlife management area at the national level. So it can be done. We do need to recognize that we have more competition at the national level than the local. So if we have a funding source that's just dedicated to Connecticut or coastal Connecticut and New York, I would prioritize that over the national programs, unless you have a larger, well-integrated program that we kind of talked about, right? Kind of integrating different pieces together, right? It's always best to go state and regional and local, even national, and you have a better chance of getting funding.
Yeah, and
sure.
Doris commented about this being even more of a reason to create regional land trusts. And so certainly, regional land trusts have that benefit of having a service area that covers multiple towns, and already just internally can create that kind of landscape scale impact. Thanks, Doris. Other questions? You can, if you'd like, you can turn on your video and unmute yourself. It's a small enough group that I'm not really worried about folks talking over each other. So feel free to reveal yourself if you want. Otherwise, if other questions, that's again, these are really meant to be very informal, 1 hour, quick opportunity to get some questions out there. And Lindsay and I were talking earlier about offering these throughout the year so that there's a more consistent way of speaking with DEEP and getting your questions answered very specifically on a consistent basis again. Anybody else have any questions? And if there's any information, we're going to put the slides will be available. I was a little delayed from the last session because I went away or was on vacation last week, but we'll get the slides available. We'll get the recordings up, and anything that we can be of assistance with, just let us know. If the information's not available to you through those sources, let us know what we can provide to you. But
I was just going to say the next 2 sessions are dedicated to questions and answers. So the next session, if you have a project that's, you're ready to apply for the open space grant program, come with questions on the application, come with questions on, appraisals, on any of that stuff that you're interested in. Let us know what you're thinking, and hopefully we can help you through some of the process. And then the following one will be on the urban green and community garden program. So open question and answer. I don't think we're going to even do a presentation. We just want to hear from you and help you get through the process.
And with that, I just want to thank Lindsay, and I know Allison is here as well, from the Office of Land Acquisition Management for their time in allowing us to do this on a weekly basis. It's really terrific, and I think it's really going to help build interest and participation in these important programs that we have been successful in getting funding for, and we want to see it spent in communities across the state. So please keep participating and keep those projects coming, because they are super important. And with that, let's see, there's some information coming in the chat. The chat information will be part of what I post on our website on the resource page for this series. So you'll be able to get that in that way, but also you just contact us if there's a specific link that you're looking for. All right. So enjoy the rest of your day, grab some lunch, and I don't know, it's not raining here in Vernon. I hope it's not raining anywhere else, so you can get outside and enjoy some sunshine. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.